Hi and welcome back to the channel. Now I had to think long and hard about whether to actually make this video or not. I haven't seen any other video about removing, as you can see from the title, the coil spring from the front suspension on a Rover P4. And the reason for the bit of reluctance in making this video is that I don't want it to necessarily be a recommendation from me that you should use this method. There are several methods out there that you can use to remove the coil spring. The first one is the workshop manual method, which is to use a jack and a chain underneath the coil spring and gradually lower it. I didn't really fancy that method, and I did a little bit of research and chatting to a few people on the forum, and one method stood out to me, which is what I'm going to go into later in the video. Now this is one of the biggest road springs on a car I have ever seen. It's almost like those on a bus, and it's really heavy and it's long. I considered using coil spring compressors, but the access to actually attach the compressors isn't very good, and you can't get much of a compression on them, and that seems quite dangerous to me. I dismissed the jack idea for a similar reason, in that it didn't seem that safe, but I know lots of people do it, but in my eyes the method I've chosen I consider the safest and the most controllable way of removing the spring. So that's it. I just wanted to put that caveat in because I don't want people coming to me, so I've recommended this, that they should do it. Something goes wrong, then someone's going to want to blame me. You make your own decision as to which method you use. I've made my decision, so I suppose without further ado we'll go into what tools you need, and it's a very small amount of tools, and then I'll shoot the video, do a time lapse of me undoing it, and then we'll go into a bit more detail perhaps at the end of the video. So it's a long ramble really to get into the start of removing the front road spring. As you can see, I've already removed the offside because I didn't want to do it and then find I got into problems, but it went quite smoothly, and I hope this one goes just as smoothly. So right, that's enough rambling. You've come to watch this video due to the title. I hope it's informative and gives you some idea of the method involved. So then, well, more rambling, but let's get into it. Okay, so in order to accomplish this job, what tools do you need? Now the first thing, and the thing that's most important, are a set of 4 threaded rod. This is stainless steel, and I've chosen stainless steel because if I have to do this job again, I don't want to be using rusty threaded rod. Plus I think the stainless steel gives you a little bit more strength in it. So yes, you need 4 of those, and these are cut to 22 millimeters, there or thereabouts. And at the top, I'll go into this a bit more detail when we actually do the job, but you've got a nut at the top and a lock nut, and the nut at the bottom, which is the one that you actually undo and release the tension in the spring. Now there's 4 of them, and I'll show you where they're positioned later on in the video. The other thing you'll need is, and I used just these spanners to undo the spring on the offside. When the spring was in tension and the threaded rod was in position, I just used these because I felt I got more control. Now you can use a ratchet spanner, but I just found these personally better to use, and plus a 1/2 inch ratchet spanner. And I did use this to undo all the bolts from underneath after the threaded rod was in position and keeping the spring under tension. So really that's all the tools you need. And as I say, I found it a straightforward job to accomplish. So the next step is for me to get the camera sorted. I'll do a couple of different angles, and I hope you find it at least entertaining and informative. Okay, so before we begin, what we're aiming to do is remove the spring and the top bump stop, and to do that we need to get the threaded rod into position. Now if I'm just remove that, this plate sits under there and is bolted by 10 bolts, 5 this side and 5 the other side, that retain the spring. And so we need to insert 4 threaded rods, 2 this side and 2 that side. Now I've seen people using that one and that one, and I think even the outer 2, but that to me is more hazardous, because what you want to do is control the reduction of the spring compression controllably, and the best way you can do that is vertically through the spring. If you start going off at an angle, you're introducing more forces which are not operating directly through the spring, through the rod. So what I will do is I'll take one of these bolts out, replace it with the threaded rod, secure it, tighten it up so that it's at the same tightness as that one, do the same to that side, and then go through all 4 and attach these rods so that everything is then secure. And what we can do then is very gradually undo the bottom bolt to start releasing the tension on the spring. I found the first time I did this I was quite apprehensive about it, but as I got further into it, I found it relatively safe. I mean, nothing can be purely safe, but there's always potential problems involved, but it came out fine. So I'll go through the process with you now and show you exactly what I did, and if you want to fast forward through the video, that's fine, and see the end product. Yep, so we'll get into it. The other thing that you must do before you start releasing pressure on the spring and untightening this bolt here is to disconnect the bottom of the shock absorber. There's a nut under there, otherwise you'll be undoing those and that'll be under tension, and well, yeah, it needs to be released. And as we're undoing them, you can see how much it has to drop before we're able to get the spring out. Anyway, more on that a bit later in the video. So the first thing we're going to do is undo the bottom bolt on the shock absorber. plus there's a rubber bush there, and another one of these cups, but they'll come off as the arm drops. Okay, so now we need to fix the threaded rod into position so we can lower the spring safely, and I'm going to use these two bolts directly in line with the spring. So what I will do now is introduce one of these rods into one of the holes, tighten it up, then do the other one, and the other side. So I'll show you how I fit one of these threaded rods, and then I'll do the other three while you're not watching, and then we'll go ahead and start lowering the spring. Okay, so that's the bolt out. So what I will do is insert the threaded rod like so. So we've got enough room for the top nut to secure, and then a locking nut. And of course then we need to lock them together. There, well and truly locked, and just snip this up. So that's nice and tight. So now we're going to do the same there and the same for the other side, and then with these rods securing the spring in place, we will then remove the three remaining bolts, and then we're in a position to start lowering the spring down. Okay, that's all the threaded bolts in position. I suppose thinking about if you wanted to add an extra level of safety, you could also put a threaded rod through this nut hole here, and the same the other side, and it would just give you an extra bit of security. But anyway, now what I'm going to do is undo the remaining bolts, of which there are 6, 3 each side, and then we can start slowly undoing the nut at the bottom there, and that should gradually release the tension in the spring. Okay, so now we're able to start taking the tension off the spring by undoing these bottom nuts. Obviously it's best to take it slow and easy, and what I find is that you undo one a little bit and then undo the other, and if you feel that one nut is becoming a little bit loose, stop, just snip it up slightly and then undo the next one, because you want to maintain a steady tension across the two bolts, front and rear. So what I will do is undo these slightly and then go to the back side and just undo those slightly, maintaining the tension, and you'll gradually see this seam here start to open up. And of course we haven't got to worry about the shock absorber now, because that's loose and that will gradually pull out of its seat. So as I say, I'll also be measuring how much distance the gap is, and as we get further into it I'll use a slightly different method of figuring out how much I need to undo the bolts at a certain point. But anyway, we'll get into that as we go on. So First of all, I'll undo this one. 1, 2, and you can just start to see it open up just there. So that's about just over 1 revolution, I think. 1, 2. That's about it. Because then I just felt this nuts go slightly loose, so it's gone a little bit too far. So I'll leave it there and just undo this a fraction. Yeah, so you maintain the tension in the nuts. I just have to go to the other side, I think, to get to those. Yeah. So we've been going about 10-12 minutes now, and as you can see, it's slow progress, but even now I'm gradually feeling that the tension is dissipating, and it's a lot easier to undo the bolts. And also the rubber retainers at the bottom of the shock absorber have now popped out and dropped to the floor, leaving that hanging. So we won't worry about that too much at the moment. We'll carry on undoing these bolts. Okay, I'll leave the camera on now because we've got a pretty much 4 centimetre drop on the spring as it is. I know we've got to go quite a bit further than that, probably about 6 or 7 before we can loosen the bolts off faster. But I'll put you on time lapse until we get to that point, because again, this is probably going to take me another 15 minutes or so to get to that point. Okay, as you can see, we've made quite good progress there, and we're now at 11 centimetres drop on the spring, and it's very easy now to undo the bolts here, but you can see how much tension the spring has lost, because I can just lift this side up or that side up and undo these nuts by hand. So if I just do this side, there you go, I've undone that about another half a centimetre or so. If I lift this side up, I can do the same, and also the same on the back side. Well, that one doesn't want to do it, but just a little bit more slack on there. Now you can see how loose everything is now, and there's absolutely no tension in the spring whatsoever. It's just the weight on the nuts down here. So now the final stretch is just to release these bolts now. So now both sides are pretty much off, It's just a few threads to go. So what I'll do is I'll get a short block of wood, if I can find one. If I now put this block of wood just under there, just to support that, I can now just take these bottom bolts off. And same at the back. So that's the bolts from the oil thread or threaded bar, whatever you want to call it, off now. Right, what we need to do now is take this crossbar off here, remove the top mount to the shock absorber, pull that out, and then we should be able to fiddle out the coil spring. So now I've removed the threaded bar, so all I need to do now to withdraw the spring is undo this cross brace here, and it should just slip out. At least that's how it worked on the last one. Okay, so I've got a use for a jack now, so that side must be slightly higher. I don't see why, but anyway, there you go. So I'll just jack this side up a little bit. Oops. Should just give us enough room to slide that out. So yeah, it's actually just, I think I've got it. There you go. Spring removed. Whew. So I'll just get everything sorted away and then we'll have a summary. Okay, let's just summarise. The job was to safely remove the coil spring from the car, and in addition to that we removed the shock absorber, which, like on the driver's side, appears to be shot. I mean, it's got no rebound whatsoever. You know, I've compressed it fully, but anyway, I know they were replaced. I think I've got the invoices from back in 2005 and 2009, I believe. I don't think they were changed at the same time, strangely enough. Anyway, so that's got to be changed, as has the other one. I'll be replacing the rubbers in this bump stop and just giving the components a good old refurbish. The spring looks okay, and I think they were replaced probably 15 years ago, so I'll give that some thought. They look in good condition anyway. And this bump stop here, whoops, looks in very good condition. There's no perishing or lifting or anything, so I'll probably keep that. Anyway, the real subject of the video was how to remove the road spring safely, and I said I'm not going to recommend to anyone how to do it. It's up to the individual, but from my personal experience doing this particular job on both the near side and the off side, is that I can see it as safe as or as safer than any of the other jobs or any of the other methods for actually removing the road spring. If you've seen the video all the way through, it's a very slow and precise way of relieving the tension in the spring, instead of like with the jack. It could be unpredictable, you could have slippage and all the rest of it. So again, as I say, I'm not going to recommend it, but I can tell you one thing: it's the method I'll be using if I need to remove the road spring again, and it's the method I'm going to be using to put the road spring back when the time is right. So I hope this video has been helpful. I know I couldn't find another video on YouTube or anywhere else for that matter that shows you how to remove a road spring. So this is the way I'm doing it. So you make up your own mind. Hope you found the video useful. There'll be lots more to come. I'll be stripping down the rest of the suspension very soon, and I'll probably do a brief video about that, and then it's on to the bodywork repairs. Behind me, I don't know if you can see, back there's two parcels which contain sheet metal of all different thicknesses, so we can get about repairing this chassis and the body here. So again, I'm waffling, so really appreciate you watching, and if you've made it this far, please like and subscribe. It really makes a difference to the channel. There'll be lots more to come on both the Rover P4 at the moment, which is taking up most of the time for the videos I'm making for YouTube, but there'll also be some work on the Lotus Elan soon, and on the Range Rover Sport, which has a little issue which I'll be going into in another video, so I'm not going to say anything about that here. So again, thanks for watching. Cheers.